So I have a really strong photography hot take, and I know a lot of people are going to be heated about this in the comment section, but that's fine. And the reason is because it's just my opinion and also the opinions of a lot of other photographers in the field. It's just something that a lot of people have happened to notice, and in this video I would like to kind of relay that message to you for you to think about or voice your opinions on, because at the end of the day, that's what this channel really is all about. If you're just getting into photography, and I mean, yeah, like you're fresh, trying to find your footing, the biggest thing that I see a lot is people telling you do not buy a mirrorless camera. And yeah, I did say it. I know every YouTuber, Reddit thread has convinced you that you need to buy a Sony ZV-E10 or a Canon R50 to be relevant, but I'm telling you straight up, that might be one of the worst moves that you can make. And stick with me to the end on this, because I'm going to explain to you pretty much everything as to why, and that this whole thing really says about the way we learn anything creative today. And spoiler alert, it's kind of messed up. Listen, so I'm not anti-mirrorless. Mirrorless cameras are really cool. I shoot on mirrorless and I love all mirrorless cameras. Their features are cool, it's fast-paced, and they're a lot more convenient for when you just want to grab a small camera and go make really good photos. But when someone DMs me saying, hey, I'm just getting into photography, what camera should I buy? And they're looking at a $1,500 or $2,500 mirrorless kit, I'm like thinking in my head, bro, you might be being sold a fantasy right now. Mirrorless cameras are built for speed, efficiency, and automation, but you're not trying to be fast yet. As a beginner, you're trying to learn, you're trying to grow, and even struggle a little bit. That's where the DSLR comes in, and this is where the unpopular opinion begins. So let me ask you this. If you really wanted to learn photography, would you learn with something that made it a lot easier for you to get better, or would you learn with something that would really make sure that you were fluent in the small things like your composition, your lighting, and all of those other things? I know it probably seems like a pretty easy question to answer, but some people would prefer to learn things the hard way to really get better at it. And I know a lot of people won't admit that, but some people will happily admit it. And me personally, I'm one of those people who would admit, especially when it comes to this, it's not like it's an excruciating workout or anything. It's kind of just messing with the camera for fun. I would pick learning it the hard way because I really do have intentions on getting better. But let me know your answer to this in the comment section down below. So here's the deal. DSLRs are slower, they're clunkier, and they don't have eye autofocus that reads your soul or live exposure previews. And that's exactly why they're better for beginners. Because when the camera doesn't hold your hand, you're forced to pretty much learn the fundamentals. You actually start to see light instead of relying on a live histogram. You stop depending on tech and start trusting your instincts. You fail more, and that's okay, because that's the best thing that could happen to a beginner, because how else are you going to learn? Mirrorless essentially is kind of like a cheat code, and I'm not saying it completely does everything for you, but it does help the most out of all of your options, being film or DSLR cameras. It kind of makes everyone feel like a pro. You point it at someone's face, it locks onto an eyeball, tracks them across the room, corrects your exposure in real time, and you're like, damn, I'm kind of nice with this. I don't know about that. The camera is also pretty nice with it, and you just happen to be using it. It's kind of like someone in GarageBand, you know, making loops and calling themselves a music producer. I mean, technically yes, but maybe not. Real photographers don't let the gear take all the credit. So let's be honest, half of the creators out here shooting on mirrorless today couldn't tell you what exposure triangle really even is. They're out here flexing, you know, f1.2 lenses with eye tracking focus, and their photos still look, you know, pretty good, pretty normal. But DSLRs don't really let you fake it. They expose you, pun intended. So when I was starting out, I had a Nikon D3200, an absolute potato of a camera by today's standards, but it taught me everything. I learned how shutter speed actually affects motion. I learned how to nail exposure by eye. I learned the value of getting it right in camera and not relying on post or features to kind of prop up your skills or your end product. It wasn't flashy, but it taught me discipline, and that's the part where it really matters. If you want to be a good photographer, that is. If you don't really care, then forget about it. Then when I moved to mirrorless, I wasn't overwhelmed, I was empowered. The DSLR is the dojo, mirrorless is the tournament. Don't skip training, essentially, is what I'm saying here. Also, can we talk about how much more accessible DSLRs are? This is one of the key parts I always talk to for beginners when they're asking me, what camera should I buy? Because you can grab a legitimate DSLR setup with a prime lens for under like $400 to $500 right now. Like less than what a mirrorless lens costs. And guess what? With that setup, you can still take amazing shots. And not for the price, just straight up amazing shots once you really hone in on your craft and get good at what you're doing. But camera companies and influencers never push that option because it doesn't make anyone any money. Mirrorless gear is the cash cow, essentially. It's the newest, shiniest item in the store, and everybody needs to line up to have it, or you're missing out and you're not as good as you could be. But this isn't the path to mastery. This is just the path to newer and more expensive stuff. The more your camera does for you, the less you actually learn. It's like using ChatGPT to write every essay. You might pass the class, yes, of course, and you might have even done a good job, but you're not getting any better. You're not getting any smarter. Photography is supposed to be frustration when you start. That's how you figure out what you like, what you suck at, and what you care about. DSLRs really keep that friction in the process, and friction really does aid your growth, especially if you do, again, want to become better at making great photos. So I let a friend of mine, a total beginner, borrow my Canon Rebel T7 and 50mm lens for a week. Then I gave him the Sony a7 III the next week, and want to know what he said? He said, with the DSLR, it was much harder. I had to really think, and it was kind of difficult to use, and I ended up taking fewer shots, but they felt a lot more meaningful and memorable, especially because of the experience and not just the photo itself. And with the Sony, I just shot. Now, guess which photos were better? Not the sharper ones, the ones with more dynamic range. The DSLR shots, because you're a lot more connected to the process. You know what you did in order to get the photo to look like this. You know what you had to think about, what you had to consider, and how difficult it was, which is the real effort behind what makes you a good photographer and what makes your photos interesting to not only you, but to other people. So he ended up saying that he learned more from 1 week with a DSLR than a month of watching mirrorless tutorials. And here's the truth that's bigger than just the cameras. We're being sold that idea that easy equals better, that friction is bad, and that convenience should be the goal so that you can do everything you want to do. But in creative work in particular, that is pretty toxic, I'm not gonna lie, because struggle is a part of art, and if the camera does all the thinking, you're never going to develop your own voice. You become a technician and not an artist. Mirrorless cameras are incredible. Don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing mirrorless cameras saying you should never buy one. Once you know what you're doing, that probably would be a really good, if not the best option for you, especially if, you are a multi-versed camera user. But it's still not a shortcut to being good. So yeah, mirrorless cameras are great. They're the future and they'll dominate the market. But for beginners, I feel like they're kind of leaning more to the side of it's a trap, because when you let the gear carry the weight too early, you miss the whole point of photography. DSLRs aren't better because they're newer. They're better because they don't let you skip the parts that matter, and that's what makes you better. So if you're beginning photography, go ahead, grab a cheap DSLR just to shoot and learn to fail, learn to feel light, and learn to make an image that's yours. Once you've built those muscles, you'll crush it on mirrorless. You'll be, the one that's really in control and not the technology. But anyways, if you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you for watching. Go ahead and drop your comments in the comment section down below, whether it be agree, disagree, just personally bashing me for whatever reason. It's all that type of stuff that goes down on these types of videos, but hey, I'm here for it. But of course, subscribe if you're new and want more interesting videos on photography talk like this. And if you did make it this far, appreciate you for watching. Anyways, I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.